は小さくてもいつか大きく響かせるため転んで傷つきまた起き上がれば新しい景色が広がるからスーパーマンになる方法なんて知らないだけどイメージだけはずっと完璧さレディゴー走り続けてレディゴーこのまま行けばきっとたどり着けそうじゃん夢のかけら掴み損ねたってがむしゃらにかき集めて雨の朝も風の夜も越えてゆくのさもっともっと遠くへ
Hey guys, Sam right here, back again with another episode of Pokemon the series, Scarlet and Violet. In the last episode, Ash had just fought Nemona, Goh has just lost to Chloe, and overall both Goh and Chloe have met both Koraidon and Miraidon. Now, when we last left off, Nemona has just finished a thrilling battle with Ash as Koharu watched the entire thing. Nemona's still riding the high of her battle with Ash, thinking about how cool it was that she has Ash as a rival now, imagining all the battles she could have with him in the future. But Ash never agreed to this. Ash also has a question for Koharu. He's wondering what was that red dragon Pokemon that Goh had. As they're talking about this is when the purple dragon, also known as Miraidon, pops out of one Koharu's Pokeballs. Ash is very surprised by the creature, but however, Miraidon actually warms up to Ash fairly quickly. At this point in time, Ash probably has a way with dragon types like these. But back to the main story. Koharu basically explains that how they found both Koraidon and Miraidon on their way to school on their first day, and they helped them out. As Ash and Koharu talk about this, as Ash is very curious on what these Pokemon are like, as they kind of look similar to Cyclizar, but he isn't sure about it. This is when Ash has a realization. He forgot that he has to give his first day report, reporting about the students and their growth. Usually they have a lot more students, so they're not expected to put it in on the first day, but since Ash had 3 students, he thinks that he could do it. So he runs off back to the classroom to finish his report before he goes out to train. This is when Nemona, finally out of her daze and realizes that Ash left, decides to go do some training in the South Province as she realizes that Ash is far and away above her level and she needs to catch up. Koharu decides to try and spend lunch with her father. On her way to spend lunch with her father, she meets Regina and a girl with blue and red hair getting harassed by Team Star again. Koharu steps up to defend them, and Regina was about to enter a battle with them herself. The grunts agree to have a double battle with the girls at the end of the day, saying that if the girls can beat them, they'll leave them alone, but if they lose, they'll have to join Team Star. This is when Koharu gets really stressed out again because she got herself into another massive hole. She barely won her first battle, and that was against another rookie trainer. If the girls lose, they'll have to join Team Star, something that both of them don't want to do. Regina, who's a little bit more experienced, agrees to train Koharu for the rest of the day so they can come up with a strategy. Now we can go back to what Ash is doing. Ash is rush typing on his laptop as Pikachu and Wattrel hype him up, and as he comments that he's nearly done and continues to write away. He writes about how Goh, Chloe, and Nemona are all very different but have some similarities. He's trying to write about what he thinks their strengths are and just an overview of how well they did on their first day. This is when we can go to actually Team Rocket from the last episode, as they end up landing in a route in the South Province. However, they are sad that they did blast off, but they don't spend much more time on that. They decide to stop for a picnic and make some sandwiches. As they're making sandwiches, a small Pokemon comes to tackle James, this Pokemon being Mastiff. James, who at first is very angry, looks at the Pokemon and then suddenly gets a flashback to his Pokemon Growly back in the good old days. He decides to end up catching this Pokemon. Jessie ends up laughing about how James got his lunch stolen, and when she wasn't looking, a Lechonk is seen scarfing down all of their food. Jessie, enraged, picks a fight with the Lechonk, and the Lechonk ends up standing her ground. Both Jessie and the Lechonk end up fighting, but Jessie ends up winning and capturing it, very similar to Viper in AJ. Team Rocket ends up celebrating about how they got new Pokemon, and now set a goal to get Ash's Pikachu and Goh's Red Dragon Pokemon. This is when we can go back to Ash, who has just finished his report and is on his way to Clavel's office so he can go train. While in that office, two students are already there, a blue-haired girl named Danica and a red-headed student named Quillon. Danica is the student body president and Quillon is the top-ranked student in terms of battle. Who's also in there is the champion of the region, Gita, as Quillon is her protege, believe it or not. They're there talking about the start of the year, and Gita actually asks Quillon if he has a chance to meet the new battle studies teacher yet. Quillon responds in a cold way, saying that he has no time to face some newbie, and it's not worth his time. This is when Gita gives one of her cold smiles. This kind of unnerves Quillon, as Quillon tries to give off the air of someone very stoic and unmoving, but stuff like this can actually affect him. But the silence gets interrupted by Ash barging into the room with his report in hand. This leaves Quillon shocked, as he had no idea that the infamous Ash Ketchum went to the Paldea Traders Academy. As Ash catches his breath, Gita asks the same question again that she did earlier, if Quillon had a chance to meet the new battle studies teacher. Quillon, who is still surprised about Ash's presence at the school, is just left in awe and is very quiet. Ash gives his report to Clavel and ends up having a conversation about the first day with his students. During the conversation between Ash, Clavel, and Gita, Danica slyly asks Quillon who this guy is and what is his deal. Quillon responds that Ash has been one of the most prolific young rising trainers in the last 3 years. He talks about how in the Kalos League, he went on a dominant winning streak, and then he made history in Alola, and then he did it once again in Galar, being the first one to ever tie in the finals. Danica wonders what an important guy is doing here of all places, but Quillon doesn't really care. Quillon ends up challenging Ash to a battle, which Ash actually does accept. After all, Gita told her about Quillon and how strong he is. They agree to battle outside of Corotando in a couple of hours. However, Ash gets an idea and calls Nemona to meet her there. Now we can go to what the girls are doing, this being Regina and Chloe, obviously. They're working on their strategy as they come up with a strategy that they think will work. They want to use Glaceon's alluring voice move to lure in the two Pokemon that the Team Stargrunts will be using, and then use Koharu's Leafage Wave technique to absolutely knock them out and overwhelm them. They think this strategy will work, so they practice making Leafage stronger the entire day, and they don't really stop and go through lunch. This is when we meet Chloe's father, Professor Cerise. He ends up teaching some of the upper level students at the academy here, as he's very prolific among Pokemon researchers. He wondered why Koharu didn't come to have lunch with him earlier. However, Koharu said that she's doing some serious training to beat Team Star. Cerise looks kind of worried as he's heard about this Team Star and about them being a bunch of delinquents, but he only asks her daughter to be careful and to make sure that she stays safe, which Koharu does agree to. This is when we can go to what Goh is doing, as Goh has went to the library with Koraidon and Fuecoco and is in a corner just reading a bunch of books about Pokemon theory, Pokemon history, ancient Pokemon, Dragon-type Pokemon. He's basically trying to find anything he can about Koraidon, but there's not a lot mentioned. There's some mentions of red dragon-like Pokemon, but he thinks those are mentioning Tyrantrum, not Koraidon here. However, the other thing he's looking up is the Herba Mystica and the Pokemon called Titans. He's looking at these Pokemon thinking that the Herba Mystica could make a great lure for Mew, and he's researching it in depth. This is when the boy from the lighthouse ends up finding him. This boy introduces himself as Arvin, and he wants to ask Goh something. At first, Goh ignores Arvin until Koraidon comes up and warms up to Arvin. Much to Arvin's chagrin, obviously, but Arvin just wanted to ask Goh if he had the key to the lighthouse or if he found it. Goh denies this as he didn't even know there was a lighthouse there. However, this is when Arvin's phones ring, and then this is when his mom, also known as Professor Sada, the world-renowned professor for her post-fossil pre-modern Pokemon era theories, which put Paldea on the map for a time, answers the phone. Goh is elated to meet one of his idols, and he's kinda envious that Arvin has such a cool mom, unlike his parents who he finds kinda lame. However, this is when Sada actually talks to Goh. She's glad that Koraidon found a good trainer and somebody it can trust. She's glad that Goh is keeping Koraidon safe, and she actually entrusts Koraidon to Goh if Koraidon's comfortable with it. Goh is elated to have Koraidon, so he's fine with this. Sada ends up giving her number to Goh, and Goh actually can call Sada if she needs anything, and Sada will actually update Goh if Koraidon gets any more of its strength back. Goh is elated to hear this. This is when, after she hangs up, Arvin takes note of what Goh is studying. He asks excitedly if Goh is going to do the Path of Legend, which Goh actually agrees to, saying that he wants to climb the Herba Mystica. Arvin, excited, agrees with this too, saying that they should form a team. Goh, realizing how much strength the Titans do have, thinks that this would be a good idea. A two-man team taking on the Titans would make it much easier, and there's plenty of Herba Mystica to go around. So they end up deciding to team up, saying that they'll take on the first Titan in the canyons, and about the end of the week, they both need to find supplies and train a bit up more. This is when Goh tells Fuecoco and Koraidon that they're gonna head to the south to catch a new teammate. This is when Ash finally makes it to the outskirts of Corotando, where the first gym is located. He ends up meeting up with Nemona again in front of a raid den. This was part of the reason why Ash called her, as he wanted to tackle a raid den with somebody, as he had his eyes on this raid den for quite a while. The raid den is a dragon type raid den. The raid goes by pretty well, as both trainers are, well, Ash is very experienced and he ends up carrying Nemona throughout here, but Nemona does learn a lot from Ash and his movements, along with his trust with his Pokemon, and Ash ends up catching a Cyclizar whose personality is pretty quiet and passive, but loves to race. This is when Team Rocket strikes as they usually would, and they send out their two new Pokemon. When Nemona gets ready to support Ash as she remembers them from the assembly, Ash says there's no need, and he sends out Pikachu with one well-shot Thunderbolt. They're sent blasting off as they have absolutely no experience fighting with these two new Pokemon, as Ash isn't ready to play their games and deal with their shenanigans every day. After this massive display of power from Pikachu and Nemona being amazed, this is when a go-getting kind of Charcadet comes out of the tall grass. Now, Charcadet can't be found here in the games, but this is the anime, so we're allowed to break the rules. So, Charcadet does come up to Ash, and Charcadet really wants to join Ash's team. It actually reminds Ash of his Oshawott a bit, with it following it. It really wants to become strong, and Ash is glad to have this kind of Pokemon on his team, saying that it's been a while since he's used a fire type like this. So he ends up choosing Charcadet and capturing it. This is when Quillon finally shows up. Now, Quillon has actually looked up to Ash for a fair bit of time, as the battle that originally got Quillon into Pokemon battling was the Kalos League Finals between Ash Greninja and Mega Charizard X. So he's always wanted to battle Ash, and now he gets the opportunity to. This is when the battle starts. Ash sends out Watchel to start, and Quillon sends out Nimble. The battle is actually fairly predictable. Quillon is the top student at the academy, so he is doing some fancy moves that do surprise Ash, but it's nothing Ash can't deal with, as Ash knows Quillon's type, and he almost figures out his battle style immediately. Using Watchel's signature speed and never being able to stay in one place kind of style, he ends up coming away with the victory with a well-shot wing attack. This is when Quillon, not too mad but kind of disturbed that he lost already, sends out his Charcadet. This is one of his favorite new Pokemon, kind of being an extension of him. Very cold, calculating, ready. This is when Charcadet ends up knocking out an exhausted Watchel, but Watchel still did give a fair fight. This is when Ash sends out his newly caught Charcadet. Nemona is confused on why Ash would send out a new Pokemon at this point in time, but Ash gives nothing but full trust in Charcadet, thinking that his go-getter attitude will make up for his lack of experience. But this is when Ash figures out Charcadet has terrible performance anxiety, which means that when he's fighting in front of people, he cannot perform to the absolute best of his ability. He ends up running away, and he's trying to counterattack, dodging hits. Quillon actually tries to get under Ash's skin, trying to talk about how weak this kind of Charcadet is. But this doesn't faze Ash at all. Ash still has unwavering faith and potential in Charcadet. He notices that Charcadet can use the move Ember. This is when Ash responds with Charcadet to use the move Ember, close its eyes, and spin. This way, Charcadet can't see anybody watching him, and he can use Ember to his full power. Now, why Ash told him to spin is for one very simple reason. Even if Charcadet opens his eyes, the flames are going to block his vision, so all he has to do is head into a straight line to where the opponent is. It's essentially like a flame Aqua Jet, sort of, without being flame charged. This is what Ash calls fire rotation. The fire rotation, it ends up being a massive deterrent for Quillon's victory here, as he has no way of countering this, as nobody's really tried to do this before, as it's been resolved that Ash has actually been studying a lot of different maneuvers, a lot of different ways that Pokemon can move with moves. In fact, he actually got inspired by this from his old Charmander with the way it used to spin and use Ember for a time. So he's actually using this to his advantage, and Charcadet, at least Ash's Charcadet, winds up beating Quillion's Charcadet in a stunning movement. Nemona's cheering for Ash, saying that she knew that Ash could do it. However, Ash never doubted Charcadet for a second, knowing that each Pokemon has its own potential, but it's just a different way of showing it. Quillon, who actually is kind of mad at this point, mad that he lost to a Charcadet that had performance anxiety of all things, sends out his ace Pokemon at this point in time, being his Scizor, and with a well-shot Bullet Punch, despite the fact that it is a Steel type, ends up knocking out Charcadet, and Ash is amazed at Scizor's speed, thinking that this is the Pokemon that definitely allowed him to reach the top rank in the Academy. However, Ash isn't deterred, and Ash ends up sending out his Pikachu, his most loyal friend. Pikachu and Scizor have an amazing bout of speed, and Iron Tail and Bullet Punch end up clashing with each other. It's an amazing bout, and Nemona can barely keep track of it herself, but this battle is still very intense between the two of them without either or giving an inch. This is when Tsurugi's eyes glow blue, and he gets ready to terastallize, as Tsurugi has the innate ability to terastallize his Pokemon without a Terra Orb. This amazes Ash and Nemona, thinking that this must be some rare thing that only he can do. He ends up Terraing his Scizor into a fighting type. Now Scizor has the move Brick Break, and it's incredibly powered up, dealing massive damage to Pikachu for a second. This is when Quillon thinks that he has the upper hand, thinking that this is where he's gonna win. However, Ash, you can't really take Ash down like that. So Ash ends up releasing his secret weapon, being a flying type Terra. Even though Pikachu doesn't have a flying type move at this point in time, this actually ends up tying it up a bit. Now, the powered up moves don't really do anything, and this is when Ash instructs Pikachu to use a well-shot Quick Attack by using some of his flying type energy within the Quick Attack for it to be super effective. This move ends up giving Ash the victory here. And Quillon is stoic. He's quiet. He doesn't say anything. You can tell what he's thinking, but he doesn't want to give off his emotions. He doesn't want to seem weak here. This is when Ash actually says this was the other reason he called Nemona here. He says that Nemona was looking for a rival, and who better than the top-ranked student in the Academy? Quillon is actually off-put by this, as he's heard of Nemona being a very battle-obsessed person, and while he loves to battle, Nemona takes it to a whole nother level. However, Nemona already doesn't listen to Quillon and starts dragging him to the Cortando Pokemon Center in order for his Pokemon to heal up. This is actually kind of funny. This is when Ash says that he'll do some training while they do that. This is when he releases his Bulldor and Bayleaf and does some training throughout the day before he goes to challenge the Cortando gym leader to raise up his Paldea Pokemon. Now we can head to the battle between the Team Star members. This is between Chloe and Regina, obviously, and the Team Star Grunts. The Team Star Grunts send out Lechonk and Yungoos, and Chloe and Regina send out Sprigatito and Glaceon. The battle goes as their strategy predicts. They use a luring voice to lure in Lechonk and Yungoos. This is when they use the newly trained and mastered Leafage Wave. However, the Grunts actually don't seem to be as big of a pushovers as they thought. This ends up making the battle more intense, as they actually have to try here. And they actually get put on the ropes here, as Sprigatito, again, Sprigatito is strong and is trying its best, but it's still a very new Pokemon for Chloe, and Chloe's still new to battling. Regina's a bit more experienced, but not too much experience to the point where she can take on two Pokemon by herself. Both trainers are put on the ropes. This is when Chloe remembers what Ash said. Battling isn't just as simply telling your Pokemon to do this and they do this. It needs both humans and Pokemon to work together. You need to work as one. This is when she gives encouragement to both Glaceon and Sprigatito. This is when Sprigatito uses Quick Attack and Glaceon uses a new move. Regina, realizing this, calls out the move Double Edge. This move being super powerful, such a powerful move that it actually causes recoil damage, ends up knocking out both Yungoos and Lechonk. This is when two things happen after the battle. First, Koharu goes to get some berries so she can give some warm berries to both her Pokemon and Regina's, along with the Team Stargrunt's Pokemon. But she ends up taking Pokemon from a Flittilil. I'm gonna be honest, guys, full daft, I don't know how to say this Pokemon, so I'm just gonna call it Flittilil. Flittilil's Pokemon, and its dex entry does rate that if you take its berries, that it kind of gets mad. However, Chloe finds this Pokemon really cute and ends up wanting it to join her team. Flittilil, taken aback by somebody being so nice to it, as it's usually very territorial, ends up joining Chloe's team here, and Chloe ends up getting her first Pokemon. This is when Regina and Chloe get a phone call from someone called Cassiopeia. She's somebody who wants to take down Team Star once and for all, and she feels like both Chloe and Regina have the strength to do it, and they both agree to help her out here. This is when Professor Clavel, who's watching the battle the entire time, overhears a conversation between them and Cassiopeia and gets an idea. Now, Goh and Koraidon have just made it to the South Province swamps as they're looking for a Paldean Wooper. He sends out Fuecoco thinking that Fuecoco's nose might actually help in this situation, and they end up finding one right away. It's a bit of a go-getter, and it's your typical Wooper that you would see in the anime. However, this Wooper eludes Goh for the entire day until the evening, as Goh is getting on his last nerve in a kind of funny way, things similar to the Dugong episode back in Journey's canon, but very similar to that. He's looking for it for the entire day as it keeps on evading him, but he ends up getting into a battle with it with Fuecoco. Now, Fuecoco ends up learning a new move in this battle. He learns Snarl, and this actually ends up helping Goh capture Wooper, as he's finally gotten a Pokemon which has high special defense, something that he's gonna need. Now it's the evening, and Ash finally decides to battle Katie in a gym battle. Katie actually agrees to Ash's challenge, saying that she's definitely going to give Ash a run for her money. Ash isn't deterred at all and actually tells Katie to bring it on at her full power. This is when the battle starts. Katie sends out her Nimble first, and Ash sends out Wattrel. Now, this is very similar to the Quillon battle that happened earlier, as Wattrel is zooming around and it's very hard for Nimble to keep track of it. This is when Wattrel ends up using the move Agility, increasing its evasiveness, and ends up landing a super strong wing attack, actually getting Ash to win. This is when she sends out her next Pokemon, she ends up sending out her Tarantula. Now, this actually ends up giving a bit more of a challenge due to the strings, but Wattrel has a never give up attitude, and its speed actually ends up working out here, as it's moving so fast that the strings can't actually stop it, as it just keeps on moving in between the fine lines between the strings, moving so fast, and it ends up using a powerful tackle to take out Tarantula. Ash actually ends up sweeping her with only one Pokemon, but she still has one Pokemon left, this being her Teddy Ursa. Now, Teddy Ursa ends up knocking out Wattrel, who was already kind of exhausted at this point, as Ash learns that Wattrel can do really well in short bursts, but in a long-term battle, it's better to go with someone else. He'll learn this for his next gym battle. However, this doesn't deter Ash, as he sends out his Charcadet next. Charcadet's surprised again that Ash trusts him so much, as Ash decides to go with Charcadet, who still has its raging performance anxiety, but is doing a bit better. Charcadet ends up running away, and this gives Katie the opportunity to use the move Trailblaze, which increases Teddy Ursa's speed to an incalculable amount. This ends up knocking around Charcadet, as it doesn't have a chance to counter, and it's being knocked around like a doll, almost. This is when Katie asks Ash why he would place so much trust in a Pokemon who has performance anxiety and can't even do well when the job is done. Why is he so unfazed in the face of him losing right now? This is when Ash remembers something from his Galar days. He remembers saying that a fire type's power comes from the will of its trainer, which means the will and trust that he puts in Charcadet will result in exponential power growth for Charcadet. Charcadet, realizing just how much Ash trusts him from an earnest place, ends up getting its firepower to the upteenth limit, and it ends up mastering the fire rotation, being able to use it consistently, kind of being like a Beyblade, if you will. Kind of being like a Beyblade. Think of Volt's Rush Launch from the Burst series, if you want a visualization of what I'm trying to go for. He ends up going consistently and bashing Teddy Ursa. Now, Teddy Ursa is almost knocked out, but miraculously, Teddy Ursa ends up evolving here into Ursaring. Ursaring gains much more strength and has much more HP here, and ends up knocking out Charcadet, but due to it having a physical contact with Charcadet, ends up getting burned due to Charcadet's ability, Flame Body, something that Ash was kind of counting on here. Ash returns Charcadet and thanks it so much for a great battle. This is when Ash sends out Pikachu, and Ash doesn't waste any time and terrorizes Pikachu into a flying type, saying that they were training to master one specific move when they were trying to tell Pikachu to use its flying type energy into Quick Attack. Ursaring comes in with a solid thrust, trying to come in and pick out Pikachu as quickly as it can. With Trailblaze, Pikachu jumps into the air, and it kind of looks like Quick Attack, but it looks different. This is the move, Aerial Ace. Quick disclaimer, Pikachu can't actually learn Aerial Ace in the game, but Pikachu is often given the Flying type Terra, and the only other Flying type move he could get was Fly, so I feel like Aerial Ace just fits better. It's kind of like a Teal Volt tackle, if you can get a visualization of what I'm trying to go for. But it uses Aerial Ace and knocks out Ursaring, and Ursaring is taken down. Katie is amazed that someone was able to push a Teddy Ursa to the point where it evolved. This just more reflects on Ash saying that you must be a really good trainer. She tells us to Katie, saying that Pokemon only evolve in battle like that when they truly want to win for their trainer here. And Katie exemplifies that. Katie thanks Ash a lot and says that if she ever needs some olive oil or anything olive related in general, to just come down to Corotando, and Ash actually agrees with this, saying that he'll probably come down for the festival once or twice. This is when we can end episode 2. Yeah, this episode was very similarly long to episode 1. Not as long, of course, but I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had to break in a couple of more times, and I will do this in the other episodes, but hopefully the other episodes should be like 15 minutes long and not 25 minutes long. Anyways, thanks for watching. Samurai out.